based up in Manchester, especially these days in serious immersion, which is the term we like to use for the application of these technologies to this space. Kind of often people talk about serious games, and the trouble is games doesn't go down very well in lots of boardrooms and such like, so you get a bit of a turn off. Lots of what Martin said before I totally agree with, and the backdrop to the use of virtual reality and augmented reality and mixed reality and all these sort of terms. I think they're all getting a bit mixed up, to be quite honest, in terms of people's perceptions of them. There is a little bit of a onus on us to try and explain what they are and also where they're appropriate. You know, total immersion is appropriate in some places, augmented reality is in others. But some of the augmented reality you see around, you just put an image on a table, it doesn't seem to have any relationship to the real world, and I think that just seems a bit pointless. But there is an onus on us to be able to do that in order to drive out the real value in all this, because otherwise it ends up being interesting toys at the end of the day. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about a project we've been doing with Crossrail and a couple of other transport applications of VR. So, serious immersion in Crossrail, just a couple of minutes on us, or less than that even. We've been around quite a while. We're very much an innovative company. We tend to get over the trenches first with new technology. Sometimes somebody comes along later and makes all the money out of it, but that's the way things are sometimes. We're based up in the Northern Quarter, which is kind of the Shoreditch of Manchester, or is Shoreditch the Northern Quarter of London? I'm not sure which way around. And we've been doing stuff pretty much around cities and infrastructure, I suppose, all our life. As mentioned earlier, back in... Well, I noticed for those people who've heard of Second Life or ever been in it, it's its 14th anniversary this month or something like that. And it did pioneer a lot of kind of immersive technology at a sort of screen-based level. It's still around. We did concerts in it, we built oil platforms, built cities, all sorts of crazy things 8 or 9 years ago. And then it kind of changed into more of a dating platform than that. But there are new versions of that coming out as well, which you should watch out for, those people who know. There's a project called Project Sansar, which is Second Life virtual reality, and another one called High Fidelity, which I think would be quite interesting in the context of some of the sort of site stuff that you were looking at before, because it's very much about people experiences and tracking people, and that's been developed by a guy called Philip Rosedale, who founded Linden Labs and who created Second Life. So that's where our background's been over the last sort of 10 years, trying to take some of these technologies and apply them to the kind of serious world rather than the game world. Sort of places we've been working on infrastructure projects. That seems to be a place that this stuff fits in quite well. So we've done work at Crossrail, which I'll talk to you in detail about in a minute, a couple of projects for Transport for London. We're working up at Sellafield, looking at how this technology can be used in planning, decommissioning of a lot of the nuclear facilities and cells there, both in terms of planning and potential for training. You don't want to spend a lot of time in some of these places, so the more you can do away from the real environment, the better. We're working with a number of cities on kind of smart city, in quotes, projects. I put that quotes. We're part of a big Innovate UK project in Manchester called CityVerve, which is Internet of Things demonstrator, and our part of that is to try and create a visualization platform for the city that can be accessed in VR or by other means like the screens and such like, and bringing sensor data into that environment. So you'll be able to look at planning experiences across the city. We're also doing work on VR in health with Christie up in Manchester, looking at patient experience of things like going into an MRI scanner, radiotherapy scan. It's not a particularly nice thing to do, so if they can prepare people for it in some way, all the better. And with some of the people at Imperial College looking at things like potential for use of VR in end-of-life care. And again, there may be some links to the stuff that you've been doing, Martin, on that. And then at the other end, we talked VR's big headset stuff like down there, and small sort of 360 videos or interactive ones for large-scale deployment. So we've just done a project with the co-op. They're into new technology now, so this is training their store staff just to what does a good store look like, and they have that 360 videos, and then they can go and look around it and see see what the problems in the store are and interact with the video using Google Cardboard, and that could be applied to lots of transport applications as well. So I'll move on quickly to the Crossrail thing now. I mean, what we're really looking at here for us is like, how do we get the data into some of these immersive environments? What do we do when we're there? And then how do we actually distribute that to people? So a lot of time when I demonstrate stuff, people start talking about how much does the headset cost. And I get a little bit bored with that because the headset is actually just a little bit of the whole story here. And this year it's HTC Vive is the popular one. Next year it might be something from Intel or whatever. If you want to do this immersive stuff, then you need to get your immersive content right, and that's where the cost is at the end of the day. And getting hold of your data, working out what the functions you want to do in that space are, whether you want to collaborate, all these different sorts of things. So that's the important bit of this. So the Crossrail project was part of something called Innovate 18, which was ran alongside the main program. It was their innovation program, which all the suppliers, contractors contributed funds to, and then different ideas were tested out, and that became available to all the supply chains. I think a very similar approach is now being adopted on HS2 and Thames Tideway, and I think there's now somebody may know that I think it's called IP3. I think there's a national innovation program around infrastructure projects. So this was So these were some of the sort of innovations overall that Crossrail looked at. So it wasn't all about IT and virtual reality. Looking at quick drying concrete, all sorts of things like that. But a couple of projects we got involved with, one at the bottom there, one is this VR multi-layer platform, as it was called initially. The ability to look at a piece of infrastructure from a view of its original CAD drawings or whatever, and also from how it was actually built in terms of a laser scan of it or photogrammetry, and that's what I'm going to show you in the Crossrail project. We also have done an HR, a sort of VR academy for Crossrail. That's like, what to do and what not to do on a building site, and that's currently been picked up by Transport for London. So this, I'll show you a video in a minute, but this will give you a little bit of because once the video playing, I can't say much about what you're seeing in some ways. So you'll see the inside of a tunnel, and you'll see an iPad type thing wandering around, and that's what that really is you have to imagine you've got this headset on, and you've got these two controllers like the colleague over there had before. One of them looks like a controller, the other actually looks like an iPad, and you interact with the sort of virtual iPad, and you can actually then do things in the space that you're in, and we'll show you measurements, be able to put objects in, take photographs, all sorts of things you might be able to do with a real iPad you can do with this virtual iPad, which is kind of a bit to get your head around it in the first instance. And then you can save all that information, and you can bring that out of the virtual space into the real world, and it means that you can spend less time in the real tunnel environment or whatever it is, because that's very expensive. Just a bit of background on who did this work with us. All the scanning was done by a company called GeoCesar, which is and Dragados, who one of the tunneling companies, did the BIM model. They're both part of a big Spanish conglomerate that I think is owned by the Real Madrid president, to give some context to this. But they were working on Crossrail. Hovering was a drone company, because we flew an autonomous drone through the tunnel to take all the photographs. That was a bit of a challenge. The drone wasn't the challenge, it was just getting access long enough to the tunnel to be allowed to fly it through. And we actually built the application. The tunnel section that we've looked at was a bit near Liverpool Street. It's called C305. We've got a laser scan from fixed tripods, lasers on tripods at each end of the tunnel. So that gets us lots of points, lots of very accurate points. We've got the BIM model as a so-called iModel, which is a Bentley software CAD system, and we got photogrammetry from the drone, though we also got a point cloud as well from the drone, but the quality of the point cloud from the drone tends not to be as great, obviously, because it's moving. What you can do is you can switch immersive views. So I'm stood in the point cloud, and I can click a button, and I'm now stood in the CAD model. And I click a button, I'm stood in the photogrammetry, and I can also have the CAD and the point cloud at the same time, so I can actually see the difference between what was supposed to have been built and what has been built. I can also then associate the BIM or CAD data with the point cloud and photogrammetry. Clearly, when you've got a photograph, you don't know that's a bit of rail, but because we've associated the underlying CAD model with the photogrammetry, you can if you look at rail, look at a bit of rail on the photograph, and click on it, it will say rail because that's what it's in the same geospace, if you like. So it's quite a neat way of giving object clarity to some to things, and you can measure, you can annotate, you can take photographs, and you'll soon be able to render out video. It's one of the interesting applications of these things is to take a journey in a big virtual reality world and then actually render a 360 video out of that, if it makes sense. So film inside the virtual world in 360 camera, and then you can play that on a phone rather than on a big headset. Technology, we've used the Vive at the moment for demonstrations because it's the go-to headset for most people at the moment. The Oculus is there around it. That does have some advantages, but for these sort of demonstrations, the Vive seems far better. We use Unity 3D, as many people do, and then we have some of our own software. So this will play as a video. So remember, this is downstairs in the exhibition hall. Hopefully after lunch, you can actually have a live demo of this. But what you're going to get here is the video taken by the person who had the headset on, if you like. So you just have to think that's what it is. But this is as somebody said, this is like, you know, I went to a VR event a couple of weeks ago, and they said, well, this is great because this looks like it's real stuff rather than some of the beautiful buildings that people are creating in VR. This is a real tunnel. Yeah. Oops, gone back. Okay, there it goes. So there's the iPad, which allows you to interact. What you see at the moment is the point cloud. The way it renders is there's about 100 million points for those who are interested in points, and it will render only those that need to be in vision. So we have to be concerned about performance in these sort of environments. That's photogrammetry from the drone, which looks from a distance much more photorealistic, but when you get close up, it's a bit skewy because it's been turned into a mesh. But that's very useful for identifying faults and things like that. You can do things like annotate. So you can text annotate a place. You can also now voice annotate it as well because the headsets have microphones on. So that can all be recorded as your session for somebody else to review, make comments on, and things like that. And the next stage, which we're in the middle of doing at the moment, is then to be able to upload all that information to a real tablet, or probably something like for those who know Google Tango, a Tango-enabled phone, which will give us the ability to take that information into the real environment, and then when you walk up to the place that there's the problem or whatever it is you want, you get that notification so you're actually going to generate from the VR world, you're going to create augmented reality in the real world because you're adding. So you've got measurements. We're in the process of adding in area measurements and volume measurements as well. As was talked earlier, you can bring objects into these environments quite happily, and we probably need to talk a little bit more, but we're in the process of building collaboration space as well, because exactly the same. What the engineers want to be able to do is to be able to review this in different locations, as you might imagine. And you can see I'm moving around now. There are various ways you can move around the space. You can walk if it's small enough, as with the setup over there, or you can fly, or you can teleport around. And you see the data's coming up. That's coming from the BIM model. So I'm not analysing the photograph. I'm actually just accessing the data behind it in some sense. I'm noticing I'm running to the end of my time, so I've got a couple more videos. For those who are interested, we've done a project with Transport for London on Victoria Station, looking at crowd flow and signage, and turning escalators on and off and all that sort of thing. That's in VR, and also the Health and Safety Academy one. I've got videos of those you can have a look at later. But this is the one I wanted to show you today in particular, as time counts down. So I'll stop at that point. say that you can come and have a look at demos of TfL at the Victoria Hazard Academy, and also what we've been doing with City Verve in Manchester, where we've taken ordnance survey point cloud data to create a city backdrop. So that's me.